Great. Thank you so much, Mike, for the introduction. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the third installment of our Conversations with Faculty series. I'm joined today by two of my colleagues at Columbia University Sports Management Program. Both are, perhaps not coincidentally, full-time employees at the National Basketball Association, the NBA. Stephen Angel, who is the Senior Vice President and the Head of Game Analytics and Strategy, and Josh Orenstein, who is the Director of Basketball Strategy and Analytics and a Senior Data Scientist at the league. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for taking the time to join us today.
It's our pleasure, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
No, our pleasure. So let's start with your backgrounds. And what did you do, and what are you doing now in your current roles at the NBA? When you decided to join the faculty as adjunct lecturers in 2020. Stephen, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Scott. So my background's actually in finance, undergraduate and graduate, with a focus or concentration in statistics. Way back in the day, I thought I wanted to be a financial engineer. And through a very winding road, ended up with a consulting firm that scored a project with the National Basketball Association to look at referee analytics. And to take a look, this is almost 20 years ago, take a look at the referee program, how it's operating, and think about how we can make it a much more data-driven or data-centric program to help ensure the best product on the floor. So since then, since I came on full-time for the NBA in 2008, I've overseen that area related to referee analytics, including, and this is where Josh and I work most closely together, just day-to-day referee performance. How are they doing? What can we do better? How can we ensure that the game is being officiated fairly, accurately, and with the common expectation of what is going to be called or not called? We also oversee an area related to integrity, to ensure that the game is being officiated fairly, not just from a sense of bias, but also to make sure that we're covering our bases when it comes to gambling, and to ensure that if there's anything, that we have the systems in place to identify it. And then lastly, because we work so closely on how the calls are being made and applied, very much involved with what the rules are, how they're explained, how they're educated, as well as analyzing new rules and changes that might come about from changing a rule, whether it's how would this affect scoring, how would this affect movement, and so on and so forth. So that's what we do. That's what I do primarily, and Josh actually drills down into some of those areas in a little bit more detail. So that's my background.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was I was supposed to be a lawyer. That's what everyone told me I should do from the age of 12, 13 on. And that's where I was headed when I was in undergrad. And then I got an internship. I went to the University of Arizona. I grew up in Tucson, got an internship in the athletics department, and really caught the bug for sports. The football and basketball teams were really good when I was there. So I got to law school and I fell on my face. Ended up in sports. I worked on the business side, first for the Mets and then for the Baseball Players Union for a few years. And then I was always a math person, so I decided to go to grad school. About 10 years into my career, decided to go to grad school and study statistics. Always loved math. And after a semester, I was fortunate a job popped up at a company called TrackMan, which tracks the flight of a ball. They were big in golf and were starting in baseball, and it was an opportunity to pivot a little bit and start to do some data analysis. So I took this job with this company that was making no revenue in baseball at the time, and it was great. I got to do data analysis as well as doing all the other things you do in an entrepreneurial environment. I did that for 4 years, and then I was fortunate to come to the NBA. So I've been at the league office about 8 years now. Actually, my graduate degree was on pause when I was with TrackMan. So, and with Stephen's support, I did finish. 7 years after I started, I got my graduate degree in quantitative methods and modeling. and I focus primarily on referee performance. I look at the work I do as coaching analytics, but when it comes to the referees, so I'm using our data to answer questions that were really to answer difficult questions related to refereeing, and also use it for evaluation and development. I do some other side projects that I enjoy working on. One is helping deliver feedback to college basketball players prior to making decisions of whether or not they want to enter the NBA draft or not. And I do that every spring. I also co-founded a program called Future Analytics Stars that we launched last year. That where the goal is to try to get under people that are underrepresented in the sports analytics community into the pipeline. And so that was a program we co-founded last year, and round two will be next year.
Very cool. And your work in that space is greatly appreciated. There's certainly not nearly enough diversity of representation in that particular space. It's not one that's necessarily particular to sports. It's a STEM problem. It's a sports issue to a degree as well. And a lot of challenges, certainly, as we attempt to diversify the space. And so the more of that we have, the better it is. And kudos to you for recognizing that and doing something about it. So we'll start on this one with you, Josh. Why did you decide to teach? What was it about it that you said, hey, I'd like to do this?
I really like working with people earlier in their career, especially sports. I mean, I was in this position. I dropped out of law school and I went to the baseball winter meetings like hundreds of other kids that are walking around those meetings in suits, desperate for jobs. And I got a job doing telemarketing, selling tickets for the Mets, and I didn't know what I was doing. And so I think just being a part of people early in their career, one in sports, to just be a resource for people. I was really flying blind. I think that's one aspect. The other is I have a passion for sports data and sharing that. I helped. I think what's interesting about the classes that we teach is that we get all levels of skill, and I like meeting all those levels of skill, whether it's you're new to it and just helping you get the foundations of it, or you want to learn to code. So I just like working with people to advance their skills and just help them get started in a challenging field.
No, and that's very evident, in what the students have to say about you and how enthusiastic you are and all the extra work that you put in for help with them. And the same thing same question for you, Stephen. And of course, the same student sentiments apply. But what made you want to teach?
I can't really trace it to anything specific. It is something that I've always wanted to do. I think I wrote a list probably 30 years ago of things to do before I die. And on there was teaching, and it was at least a year at a university level. And my guess is that if LJ went deep enough back into her emails, she'd find that we had crossed paths at some point as I was looking at opportunities to get into teaching. And I can't really say it was something specific. I think the one thing that is true about teaching, whether you are a teacher or a student, is that the most memorable people in your lives do tend to come from teaching institutions, whether it's at the younger level or the graduate level. And I could still name all the people who taught me through going all the way from kindergarten through my last year of high school. And I think that relationship and that relationship building is very important. Something I've always sort of aspired to be a part of. Otherwise, I love the subjects that we teach. I don't know if I were teaching something outside of the world that I live and the things that I love, if I would be as, I think I'd still be interested. I don't necessarily think we'd have such a dynamic class. And you know, when you talk about something you love, it really is great to have, to see other people learn from it, engage with it, get inspired by it. And when you deal, and it's funny because when you deal with referees, you know, I think most people at the onset think, oh boy, this is going to be silly. But when you really dig into what we do and how we do it, it becomes pretty amazing, whether for our organization or any organization.
Yeah. So, and you both teach two different courses, right? So you co-teach these classes, fundamentals of sports analytics and basketball analytics. Stephen, maybe if you want to take us through the fundamentals course and tell us about that class, and Josh, if you could then do the same thing with the basketball analytics course.
Sure. You know, Josh mentioned that when we have students coming in to the class, they're at different levels. And we teach a basketball analytics class. And one of the things that we noticed were people that were coming in, not just at different levels, but in some cases really with a lack of any understanding of statistics. And when we were talking, Scott, about what a fundamentals class would look like, you know, we were pretty adamant about let's go to the basics. Let's make this about, you know, what are the mathematical formulas that we use and why do we use them and in what situations, so that whether you learn this for basketball analytics or sports analytics or any analytics that you do, to have a fundamental understanding of statistics is such a powerful thing to have in your toolbox. So that's where we, you know, sort of how we structured the class. And it's funny because, you know, analytics or statistics is agnostic to the subject you're talking about. The data will change, but the methodologies are largely the same. And so Josh and I built this class really from scratch. We use a textbook, which helps us sort of give readings out so you learn the concepts well. But when it comes to the actual practice and the problems, those are built from scratch, because that's where the sports parts come in. The textbook is, you know, automotive analysis and marketing analysis, and that's great. But what about player analysis? Where's that? So we built this class around the idea of learning statistics, parenthetically, using sports data. And I think a lot of folks have gotten a lot out of it, no matter where they're going to go with their career.
Yeah, no, I would certainly agree with that sentiment, no question. And it really is an amazing class. I mean, built from scratch. You know, with LJ Holmgren, our deputy director, really kind of leading the way from a structure perspective and a pedagogy perspective, and kind of you know, very much involved in the creative process. And Josh, tell us about the basketball analytics course.
You know, in basketball analytics, we want you. It's really a course about critical thinking, with analytics being the framework. Just like the other course, lots of levels of skills, and we want to meet you where you're at. And so we start the course introducing you to some of the advanced metrics of it that are used in basketball, and then we have you apply them. So this semester we're teaching this course right now. We have 2 projects during the semester, and the timing of the NBA calendar is back to normal, and so we're able to align this course with the real life decision making in basketball. So we did a mock draft assignment where we did a mock draft in class for the NBA draft, and you know, through the lens of being an analytics person. And then we just wrapped up a free agency assignment. So NBA free agency mostly happened about 2 weeks ago, and so we had students analyze what would you have done in a few cases, a few of the with some of the high profile players, and then analyze what actually happened using analytics, using a mix of quantitative and qualitative data. And the class culminates in a final project where the students, it's either an individual or a group, will decide on a question that they want to answer in basketball analytics. And so and that's the real main portion of the class. I think for those that have a lot of skills, we hope that you get out of it a project that you can present potentially in an interview or just have as part of your portfolio. for those where basketball analytics is new, it's important to learn about the space. If you're going to work in sports, analytics is a big piece of really any sports team, and so it's important to become well versed in how your team or how your company is looking at player and team valuations.
Yeah, no, right, great point. And it's in a way, we talk amongst ourselves and we laugh about it with our students. In a way, we're tricking you through our sports specific courses, to learn about analytics in a way that you don't even realize you're learning about analytics, right? No doubt about that. So do you have a favorite course to teach, Josh, or do you love them both the same? Or is it like the parent with multiple children? Like, what do you do here?
I mean, I've gone back and forth. I think what's fun about the foundations course, it's an intro to stats class. I mean, we're using a college level statistics textbook and then we created our own data set, and I did a lot of that. So that was really fun. I started trail running in the past year. I threw in some trail running data because it's everyone in class could see how slow I was. Maybe I won't do that next year. But I've gone back and forth. I think that this free agency project, I mean, it's funny as professors, you find that you're doing homework, you just do it a lot earlier. I think having students make these decisions, whether it's the draft or free agency, it's sort of rejuvenated the basketball analytics in this conversation. So I think if you ask today, it's basketball analytics, but maybe I'm biased because we're teaching it now, but I like them both.
Now, because in basketball analytics, by the way, can you account for a superstar hypothetically making a trade demand in the middle of a long-term contract?
So we studied Zach LaVine, Bradley Beal, DeAndre Ayton, and Jalen Brunson. We thought about having Kyrie in there, and I couldn't come up with the one or two straightforward questions because there's more than just basketball.
Right. It's a tough one
to analyze. So it's tough. We tried to keep it straightforward. DeAndre Ayton is tough, just because he hasn't signed anywhere yet. But
right. And Steven, how about you? Favorite course to teach?
Yeah, it's funny. It was nice to have a little bit more time to think about it. And I have to say that it's not that one or the other. There are certain topics within each course that I think are, I would say are my favorite parts. And both of them, if I think even further, are really where they give people and the students sort of an aha moment where you really see the light bulb go on and you see them really kind of understand something that they didn't understand before. And for the basketball analytics class, we spend a lot of time up front talking about the different metrics that are used to analyze players or teams. And some of them are very complex, like player efficiency rating, and they include many different variables. And our goal in teaching the class is to make sure that people understand what measures they use. So we spend all that time dissecting it. And then we force the questions, okay, is this measuring what you think it's measuring or you thought it was measuring? What's it actually measuring? And what would you do to do it differently? Like, what would you do to make this better? And seeing people really understand what that measure is really good. And it's also a skill that's useful because it doesn't matter if you're in finance, like you should know what the Dow Jones does, know what the S&P does. It's a number we talk about every day, but what does it even mean? And does it measure what you think it does? And when it comes to the fundamentals class, it's funny because it's such a basic statistical concept, but standard deviation is the underlying sort of measure of everything else you build a statistical career about, right? Whether it's correlation, or it's ANOVA, or anything else, it is all at its core about standard deviation and accounting for variance. And when you understand that part, and when you understand what standard deviation really does, and then you see how it applies to all these other things, it's just really cool to see people kind of come to that realization that, oh, that's what that does, and that's why that is, and that's why that formula works the way it does. So those, I wouldn't say one better than the other, but there's definitely topics within them that I just love seeing people get their heads around and walk out with something practical and kind of cool.
Yeah, and very cool. And not all of our students are quants, right? I mean, some certainly are, right? But many of them are not. How do you manage to effectively teach all of them in the same course? I mean, they're coming to it from such different places, and we're doing some work to have some more leveling coming in for our students in terms of orientation, pre-programming. I'm sorry, pre-program programming to get them up to a certain speed. But how do you do that? That must be a pretty big challenge.
To me or to
Josh,
Josh?
yeah, either one.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think what's, our classes are relatively small. I mean, 16 to about, 16 to 20 people, Scott, maybe. So I think that we're happy, Steve and I are both happy to give individual attention. I think that's really important. I think I enjoy teaching those that statistics is completely new to more than anything. And I think the individual attention is important outside of class, in office hours. We have a weekly office hour, but always happy to make extra time. We also give Stephen's great at this. Like, we give a ton of feedback. So I think it's just, I like to meet people where they are. The last, that 3 semesters where my office hour was often spent with advanced students, taking them through how to program in R, because we teach this course in Excel. And so I think it's just making sure that, that you're just meeting people where they're at. I think the course is approachable for anyone, no matter what their skill level is coming in.
Yeah, and Stephen, you've obviously, and Josh too, you're able to bring your considerable experience into the classroom. How do you do so? Like, is there a typical class session? If so, what does it look like? I mean, you have so much knowledge and so, in your heads and your considerable experiences. How do you bring that to life in the classroom? Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take it. Some of it's part of the curriculum, especially in basketball analytics, of course, and some of it's just it just happens a little bit more naturally or organically. Last night we were discussing aspects of free agency, and we had some additional time, and so we just took on we took it as an opportunity to talk about how we are currently using some basketball analysis to look at certain rules. So we were looking at and analyzing flagrant fouls and the consistency that referees bring to flagrant fouls, and talked about some of the real challenges of trying to analyze anything, starting with the data collection process, the data cleaning process, the methodology approach, and the methodology selection, and of course the presentation and visuals around it as well. So it was just a great opportunity, and that happened. Other times, in the fundamentals class, we'll actually use some real life examples of how we analyze whether it's referee performance or changing certain rules. We could talk about it, generally. We can't give up individual referee performance and all that stuff, of course. But if we could talk about it in a way that people see the applicability of the different types of analyses and the way that the league, our league, and pretty much most organizations work now, like, there are very, very few decisions that are not made with some data support, right? You'll have a gut decision. We should do this. Fine. The next question is, what does the data say? And if the data is not ready yet, let's wait to see what the data says and spend that time analyzing before making that decision. So that's sort of, we have a lot of things going on, and we love to bring those real life things to the class.
No doubt. And you've both very quickly developed the reputation of being very strong teachers, as reflected in student comments and evaluations, and just even the stories we get coming out of the classroom. Tell us about the process that you went through to go from practitioner to highly regarded faculty member. Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we got because of COVID, we got a long runway right? Because we started on Zoom. So we get, I think it's really great to get feedback from students, which isn't easy to get. But I think what you learn, early on. I think it's just learning early on from how students are responding to what you've assigned. I mean, the first homework we assigned and the first course we did was the first time we'd ever assigned homework. And so just, I think we just learn. I think we generally learn that if all the students have a problem with something, it's probably us.
Yeah.
And so I think trying to learn through students' feedback from how they're all doing the work, how they're engaging in the course. Are they talking? Are they talking to us a lot, communicating a lot? Is there a lot of back and forth? What's the effort level in the homeworks? I think that what I learned as a grad student is grad school is what you make of it. It's not like undergrad where there's A's to S. Grad school is a little different, and you're gonna get. My experience was if I worked really hard on a course, it was really good for me. My skills got better. I got stronger, and so I think that's what we try to do. Is we try to really pay attention. We just try to really pay attention to what students are saying and doing and reacting to what we provide to them.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And what about in the preparation phase leading up to teaching that first class, Stephen? Tell us about pedagogy.
Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, I think that the first thing I did, and is to really think about it. You might remember, Scott and LJ, when we came in, and I sort of had an outline for the things that might be useful for us to talk about, might be interesting. And a lot of it was really trying to put myself in the position of the students and thinking, okay, I see what the title of this course is. What am I going to get at? What skills am I going to have coming out? Are they marketable? Are they useful? And to sort of balance that out. And then to just think about all the different things we do, looking at some combination of, well, here's a really interesting thing that I bet nobody understands or thinks about. Our schedule, our game schedule is such a complicated problem. Now, Josh and I don't happen to work on that, but we understand the methodologies that go into it, and we work with the people who do it. So it gives us an opportunity to really bring those decisions to life by looking at that data, talking about the way that those decisions are made and how that all kind of comes together. So we do a lot of that. And then it was a matter of really just putting pen to paper on, okay, now if we've agreed on what the course outline is going to look like, how do we really bring it to life? What's the class going to look like? What's the topic flow going to look like? And what's the homework going to do, so that we're reinforcing those topics when students leave the classroom as well.
Yeah, no, fair point. So let's change gears a little bit as we're starting to wind down with our time together today. What do you like to do in your free time, Josh?
Well, I have a 3-year-old. I love spending time with her. I love Formula One. It's not work. I have basketball and baseball. I turned into work. I do trail running. I have a mild sneaker problem. Looking down at some, and I love coffee.
Excellent. Stephen?
Yeah, I need coffee. I don't want to sound cliche. My free time is really spent with my family as much as possible. My free time is rather limited, depending on the time of year and the chaos going on. Even now I'm in a conference room in Las Vegas because I'm out here at summer league. We think that basketball stops when the season stops, but it never stops, and we're always preparing for the next step. So free time is precious, and as much as I can, I want to spend it with my family.
Yeah, great point. What teams do you root for, by the way? Besides, of course, our Columbia Lions. What teams do you root for, Stephen? No NBA teams. I understand you love them all.
No. I grew up in New York. I've always loved the Knicks, and everybody comes to the league. So most people come to the NBA because they love the game and they want to be a part of it, right? And so the reason they're a part of it is because they have a favorite team. So orientation. Everybody goes around the room and talks about their favorite basketball memory and their favorite team. So, yeah, I'm a Knicks, Giants, Rangers, and I'm not much of an MLS follower. Any Yankees,
right?
Are my team. So that's pretty much it.
And Josh, how about you?
I grew up my first love was the Mets, and I worked for them, so it changes your relationship.
No editorial comments either way, but I hear you.
It's just different. But I grew up in Tucson. I grew up on college basketball, so I'm an Arizona Wildcats fan. Most of my coworkers are annoyed because I can always reference an Arizona Wildcat player. In the NBA, I've really evolved a lot. I lived in New York when I was little, so I liked the Knicks, and then I liked the Phoenix Suns. Then I lived in Brooklyn. So I don't know. I've been all over the place, and in Formula One, I think it's Mercedes.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I just started. I'm very, very late to the game. I'm midway through season 1 of Drive to Survive on Netflix, and it's compelling. I mean, it really is. But I'm in 2018 right now. So, and I'm trying not to find out what happened. I got to do everything in my power not to look to see what the moves were going forward. So last question for both of you, and thank you again so much for being so generous with your time today. What are some trends that you see in your job at the league and more broadly within the field of sports analytics? Josh, we'll start with you on this one.
I think the biggest one in the past few years in the industry as a whole is sports gambling. I see it with some Columbia alumni. You see it with all the startups. I think that's the biggest growth in the entire sports industry in America, it seems. And there's, I was one of very few analytics people when I started. Now there's 30 to 50 at the league office. So obviously analytics too. And on the field, it's really the like player health, anything related to on the field in any sport, just related to measuring player health is a trend.
Yep. Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, this is outside of my direct world, but the conversations that we generally have around the office and direction about where the leagues are going tends to be about how people consume the games now. It's different. People don't necessarily sit down and anticipate a game and watch from start to finish. There's a lot of flipping, there's a lot of highlights, and there's a lot of competition for attention. And so much of what's going on is, how do we continuously create content that is engaging and draws people to us? And if we can't draw them to us, how do we get to them? So it's something that's facing all leagues, because we generally have similar business models around, putting the product out there historically through television, now through social media, and then getting butts in seats. So how are we ensuring that we keep both of those things alive for everybody?
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you so much to Stephen and to you, Josh, for taking the time out of your day. I know you're busy, Stephen. You're running around, in Vegas, and Josh, you're taking busy time out of your schedule, and really appreciate it, and for sharing your knowledge with everyone on the call. Look forward to seeing you both soon. And to everyone else, thank you so much for joining us for the 3rd edition of Faculty Conversations in the Sports Management Program at Columbia University. Again, I'm Scott Rosner, and look forward to being in touch. Thank you.